Close your eyes for a moment and imagine stepping back 5,000 years. No electric lights bleeding into the darkness, no atmospheric haze from industry clouding the heavens. Just you, standing beneath a canopy of stars so brilliant, so impossibly dense, that the Milky Way casts shadows on the ground beneath your feet. This was the sky our ancestors knew. Not a backdrop to life, but life itself. A cosmic calendar written in points of light, each star a mark in time, each constellation a chapter in the story of survival. For them, astronomy wasn't academic curiosity. It was the difference between feast and famine, between knowing when the floods would come and being swept away by them. They watched, they recorded, they remembered. In the ruins of ancient civilizations we find something remarkable. Not primitive scratches on the stone, but sophisticated astronomical instruments that rival our modern computers in their precision. The Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a Greek shipwreck, contains bronze gears so intricate they could predict the positions of the sun, moon, and planets decades into the future. This wasn't magic. This was mathematics, applied with a patience and dedication that spans generations. Consider the great stone circle of Stonehenge, its massive trilithons aligned not just to the summer solstice, but to the 18.6-year lunar cycle, a pattern so subtle it takes decades of careful observation to detect. Or the temples of Angkor Wat, oriented to mark the precession of the equinoxes across millennia. These monuments weren't built by people guessing at the sky. They were constructed by civilizations that understood cosmic time with an accuracy that would make modern astronomers pause in respect. The Babylonians left us ephemeris tablets, mathematical records of planetary positions stretching back over centuries. They could predict eclipses with precision that rivals our satellite-assisted calculations today. The Maya computed the orbit of Venus to an accuracy of just 2 hours across 500 years. The ancient Chinese maintained continuous astronomical records for over 4,000 years, documenting everything from supernovae to planetary conjunctions with bureaucratic precision. But here's what makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Scattered throughout these meticulous records are descriptions of objects that don't fit. Visitors that appeared once and never returned. Lights that moved against the stellar background following no earthly cycle, no predictable pattern. The Sumerians called them stars that pass once and do not return. The Egyptians spoke of the eye that watches from beyond the circle of stars. The Maya tracked twin visitors that marked the end of great cycles. We, in our modern age, have given these cosmic wanderers a clinical name: interstellar objects. Objects from beyond our solar system, travelling at such extreme velocities that they make a single pass through our neighbourhood before disappearing back into the void between stars. Until 2017, we had never definitively detected one. The first, called Oumuamua, baffled astronomers with its strange acceleration and impossible trajectory. The second, named Borisov, behaved more like a familiar comet but came from an impossible direction. And now 3I Atlas approaches, an object so unusual, so defiant of our expectations, that it challenges everything we think we know about how the universe works. But what if I told you that this cosmic visitor might not be as unprecedented as we think? What if the ancients, with their naked eyes and patient centuries of observation, had already seen 3I Atlas, or objects exactly like it, pass through our solar system before? The mathematics are unsettling. For ancient civilizations across the globe to independently record objects matching the behavior profile of interstellar visitors suggests these cosmic travelers might be far more common than modern astronomy assumes. The Babylonians distinguished between regular stars, wandering stars, what we call planets, and visitor stars that do not return. That's not the language of superstition. That's the terminology of careful, systematic observation. Think about the implications for a moment. These ancient watchers didn't have light pollution drowning out faint objects. They didn't have atmospheric interference from industrial activity. What they had was time, generations of sky watchers passing down their knowledge, building observational databases that spanned centuries. If an object bright enough to be visible to the naked eye had passed through the inner solar system on an interstellar trajectory, they would have seen it. And more importantly, they would have recorded it. The question that haunts modern astronomy is this: if interstellar objects are rare cosmic accidents, why do ancient records from independent civilizations describe the same phenomenon? Why do cultures separated by oceans and millennia use remarkably similar language to describe visitors from beyond the known stars? Perhaps the ancients weren't recording myths. Perhaps they were documenting reality. Cosmic visitors that follow patterns too long for our short-lived civilization to recognize, but perfectly visible to cultures that thought in terms of deep time, of cycles within cycles, of astronomical memory preserved across generations. Do you think it's possible that ancient civilizations tracked cosmic visitors we're only now learning to see? And if so, what else might they have predicted that we haven't discovered yet? The stone circles stand silent now, their purpose largely forgotten. The cuneiform tablets gather dust in museum archives, their astronomical records untranslated. But if you know how to read them, if you understand the language of cosmic time, they tell a story that connects the deepest past to the approaching present. A story of watchers who saw Three-Eye Atlas coming long before we ever thought to look. Picture yourself standing in the ruins of ancient Babylon, where the Euphrates once flowed past ziggurats that scraped the sky. Here, in chambers carved deep into temple foundations, priest astronomers worked by lamplight, pressing wedge-shaped marks into clay tablets, with the patience of monks copying sacred texts. But these weren't religious documents they were creating. They were building humanity's first systematic survey of the heavens, a cosmic database that would survive the fall of empires. The Sumerians gave us more than writing and the wheel. They gave us astronomy as a science. Their priest astronomers didn't just watch the sky, they interrogated it, demanding answers from every point of light that dared to move against the eternal patterns of the stars. In the archives of the British Museum and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, thousands of these cuneiform tablets wait in climate-controlled silence. Most contain the mundane records of ancient bureaucracy, grain inventories, legal contracts, tax assessments. But scattered among them are documents that record something far more profound. The Enuma Anu Enlil series, 70 tablets that catalogue 4,000 years of celestial observations with mathematical precision that would make modern astronomers envious. These tablets contain the birth of predictive astronomy. The Sumerians could forecast eclipses, track planetary retrograde motions, and calculate the precession of equinoxes across centuries. But hidden within their meticulous records are entries that describe something else entirely, objects that didn't behave according to any known celestial law. The Mulopin Astronomical Compendium, composed around 1000 BCE but containing observations stretching back millennia, includes star catalogues so accurate they're still used to calibrate ancient dating systems. Within these catalogues, alongside familiar constellations and planetary positions, are references to what the Sumerians called Kakabusha Inalibi, Shame Idzadzu, literally, stars that stand alone in the midst of heaven. These weren't planets. The Sumerians knew planets intimately, tracking their complex dance across the zodiac with mathematical models that predicted their positions years in advance. These weren't comets either. The ancient astronomers understood comets well, hairy stars that appeared and disappeared on predictable cycles, growing bright as they approached the sun and fading as they retreated to the outer darkness. No, these stars that stand alone were different. They appeared suddenly, moved across the sky following trajectories that defied all known patterns, and then vanished forever into the deep. The tablets describe them with a terminology that sends chills down the spine of anyone familiar with modern interstellar object research. Visitors that pass once and do not return. One tablet, catalogued as K160 in the British Museum's Assyrian collection, contains an observation that could have been written yesterday by an astronomer tracking an interstellar visitor. Translated from the original Akkadian, it reads, "In the month of Tashrit, a bright star appeared in the constellation of the Eagle. It moved swiftly against the background of heaven, following no path of Anu, Enlil, or Ea. For 40 days it was visible, then it departed to the place of no return." The precision is striking. The paths of Anu, Enlil, and Ea were the Sumerian system for tracking planetary motions, 3 celestial highways along which all known wandering stars travelled. An object moving outside these paths would be following what we now recognise as a hyperbolic trajectory, the signature of an interstellar visitor. But perhaps most intriguing are the references to the watchers from heaven. a class of celestial beings associated specifically with these anomalous visitors. The Epic of Gilgamesh mentions them only in passing, but other Sumerian texts describe them as messengers from the far reaches of creation, bearers of knowledge from beyond the sphere of familiar stars. The ancient astronomers didn't interpret these visitors as random cosmic debris. They saw them as purposeful, scouts perhaps, or signals from civilizations dwelling in the darkness between stars. The tablets speak of eyes that watch from the void and lights that carry the wisdom of distant places. Consider the mathematical sophistication required to distinguish these objects from ordinary celestial phenomena. The Sumerians had to track the complex motions of planets, predict the subtle timing of eclipses, and map the slow precession of the zodiac, all while simultaneously recognizing when an object was behaving according to completely different physical laws. This wasn't casual stargazing, this was systematic, multi-generational astronomical surveillance conducted with scientific rigor that rivals modern observation protocols. The tablets record not just individual sightings, but patterns across centuries. References to the return of the Watchers suggest these ancient astronomers believed the visitors followed extremely long cycles, periods so extended that they could only be detected by civilizations with the patience to maintain continuous records across millennia. One fragmentary tablet speaks of the year when twin lights crossed the path of Marduk, a reference that becomes electrifying when you realize that modern observations suggest interstellar objects might travel in gravitationally bound pairs, separated by decades or centuries but following related trajectories through the galaxy. The Sumerians developed a sophisticated vocabulary for these phenomena that has no equivalent in other ancient languages. They distinguish between Mulushaturu, stars that return in known cycles, and Mulushalaturu, stars that pass once and are gone forever. This isn't the language of mythology. This is the terminology of a civilization that had observed both types of objects and understood the fundamental difference between them. What makes these records particularly compelling is their clinical tone. There's no hysteria, no apocalyptic interpretation. These are bureaucratic documents, recorded with the same matter-of-fact precision the Sumerians applied to tracking grain harvests or flood cycles. To them, interstellar visitors weren't supernatural events. They were simply another category of celestial phenomenon that required documentation and study. The question that haunts modern astronomy is this: if the Sumerians could recognize and track interstellar objects 4,000 years ago, what does that tell us about the frequency of these cosmic visitors? Current models suggest interstellar objects should be extremely rare, perhaps one detectable visitor per decade, but the Sumerian records imply they were observing these phenomena regularly, systematically, as part of their routine astronomical work. Perhaps our modern estimates are wrong. Perhaps the galaxy is far more crowded with wandering objects than we realize. Or perhaps the ancients, with their unobstructed skies and multi-generational observation programs, were simply better at detecting these cosmic visitors than our technology-dependent civilization has yet learned to be. The tablets fall silent after the fall of Babylon, their astronomical knowledge scattered to the winds of conquest and time. But the records they leave behind suggest something profound, that the cosmos has been sending us visitors for millennia, and our ancestors were watching, recording, and trying to understand the message hidden in their impossible trajectories. In the darkness between the lines of cuneiform text, a pattern emerges, one that connects the deepest past to the approaching present, suggesting that what we think of as recent cosmic discoveries might actually be the fulfillment of observations begun when writing itself was young. The Sumerians called them watchers. We call them interstellar objects. But across 4,000 years, the mystery remains the same. Where do they come from, and what are they trying to tell us? Stand in the shadows of the Temple of Dendera at dawn, where ancient stone bears witness to one of humanity's most enigmatic star maps. Carved into the ceiling of Hathor's sanctuary is the Dendera Zodiac, a circular masterpiece depicting constellations, planets, and celestial cycles with breathtaking precision. But look closer, past the familiar patterns of stars and the predictable dance of planets, and you'll notice something that shouldn't be there. Among the carefully catalogued celestial bodies, the ancient artists included objects that follow no known astronomical pattern, symbols that represent lights in the sky which appeared once, blazed with impossible brightness, and then vanished back into the cosmic deep. The Egyptians, it seems, were tracking the same anomalous visitors that had captivated their Sumerian neighbours to the east. For over 3,000 years, Egyptian civilization maintained an unbroken chain of astronomical observation that rivals any modern program in its dedication and scope. Their priest astronomers worked from temples aligned with mathematical precision to capture the subtle movements of stars across millennia. The Great Pyramid's passages frame the constellation Orion with an accuracy that suggests its builders understood stellar precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that takes 26,000 years to complete. But the Egyptians weren't content merely to track the predictable. Deep in the tomb of Senenmut, architect Queen Hatshepsut, astronomers painted star charts that include objects modern archaeology struggles to identify. These aren't planets. The Egyptians knew planetary motions intimately, predicting their positions with mathematical models preserved in papyri that stretch back 4 millennia. These aren't comets either. Egyptian records distinguish clearly between stars with tails that return on regular cycles and something else entirely. The hieroglyphic texts speak of the eye of Ra that watches from afar, not the sun, which was Ra's primary symbol, but a separate entity described as a luminous presence that appeared and vanished according to its own mysterious schedule. Unlike the sun's predictable daily journey or the moon's monthly cycle, this celestial eye followed no earthly pattern. It came from beyond the circle of stars and departed to the place where light is born. In the pyramid texts of Unas, carved in stone over 4,000 years ago, we find references to the eye that opens in the darkness between the two horizons. The language is poetic, but the astronomical precision underlying it is unmistakable. The two horizons refer to the eastern and western limits of celestial observation, the boundaries beyond which objects disappear into the deeper cosmos. An eye that opens in the darkness between these horizons would be describing an object that appeared to materialize from intergalactic space itself. The Papyrus of Senenmut contains what may be humanity's oldest recorded observation of stellar variability, the star Algol, which the Egyptians called the Demon Star, because it dimmed and brightened on a precise 2.87-day cycle. This demonstrates that Egyptian astronomers were capable of detecting subtle changes in celestial brightness over short time periods. If they could track a star that varied by barely perceptible amounts, they would certainly have noticed objects bright enough to be visible during interstellar approach. But perhaps most intriguing are the temple alignments that don't match any known stellar or planetary cycles. The Temple of Edfu contains chambers oriented to capture light from celestial events that occur on timeframes far exceeding human lifespans. Archaeological astronomers have discovered that certain passages align with stellar positions that were only relevant for brief periods separated by thousands of years, as if the temple was designed to mark the return of visitors who followed cosmic schedules beyond ordinary human comprehension. The Egyptian concept of Netja, often translated as God, but more accurately meaning cosmic principle, includes entities specifically associated with these anomalous celestial phenomena. The goddess Sopdet, linked to the star Sirius, was predictable. Her annual rising marked the flooding of the Nile with clockwork precision, but the texts also describe the Netja of the Far Journey, entities whose appearances marked not seasonal cycles, but transitions between entire ages of cosmic time. In the tomb paintings of the Valley of the Kings, artists depicted what they called the boats of night, vessels that carried light across the darkness between stars. These weren't metaphors for the sun's nightly journey through the underworld, which was depicted separately with entirely different iconography. These were representations of objects that traversed the deepest cosmic distances, bringing illumination from regions where no earthly light could reach. The mathematical sophistication required to track such phenomena becomes clear when you examine the astronomical papyri preserved in collections around the world. The Egyptian calendar system could predict eclipses centuries in advance and track the complex retrograde motions of planets with stunning accuracy. Their priests calculated the precession of the equinoxes and maintained star catalogues that remained useful for over a millennium. This wasn't a civilization prone to recording random lights in the sky as divine visitations. This was a culture that distinguished carefully between the predictable and the anomalous. between the familiar cycles of solar system astronomy and something else entirely. The pyramid texts speak of the star that is in the following of Ra, a celestial object that accompanied the sun but wasn't bound by solar gravity. Modern astronomers would recognize this description immediately, an object passing through the inner solar system on a hyperbolic trajectory, briefly visible as it approached the sun before disappearing back into interstellar space. Egyptian medical papyri demonstrate that their scholars understood cause and effect with scientific precision. Their mathematical texts show they could solve complex geometric problems and calculate volumes with algebraic methods. Their engineering achievements required sophisticated understanding of physics and material science. This wasn't a civilization given to superstitious interpretation of natural phenomena. When Egyptian astronomers recorded anomalous celestial visitors, they were documenting real observations with the same systematic approach they applied to every other aspect of their scientific work. The mystery deepens when you consider the global implications. While Egyptian astronomers were recording the eye that watches from afar, Sumerian tablets were documenting stars that pass once and do not return. These civilizations had no contact with each other's astronomical records, yet they were independently describing phenomena that match exactly what modern science recognizes as interstellar objects. The statistical probability of this being coincidence approaches zero. For multiple ancient civilizations to independently develop terminology for describing objects with hyperbolic trajectories, objects that appear once and never return, suggests these cosmic visitors were far more common in the ancient past than current models predict. Or perhaps they still are, and our modern observational methods are simply less sensitive than the naked eye astronomy practiced by civilizations that thought in terms of deep time. The hieroglyphic records fall silent after the conquest of Alexander, their astronomical knowledge absorbed into Greek mathematical traditions and gradually forgotten. But carved into stone temples and painted on tomb walls, the evidence remains. Egyptian civilization tracked cosmic visitors for over 3 millennia, developing sophisticated methods for distinguishing these anomalous objects from the familiar inhabitants of the solar system. In the shadows of Dendera, where ancient stone still captures the first light of dawn, the carved symbols seem to watch with patient eyes. They've been waiting 4,000 years for us to understand their message, that the eye which watches from afar has been making its cosmic rounds since the pyramids were young, following patterns too vast for any single civilization to comprehend, but perfectly visible to cultures willing to watch and wait across the deep cycles of cosmic time. What did they see in their unobstructed skies that we, with all our technological sophistication, are only now learning to recognize? And if their records are accurate, what does that tell us about the true nature of the approaching visitor that we've given the clinical designation of an interstellar object? The Eye of Ra watches still, patient as starlight, ancient as the first dawn that illuminated human consciousness, reaching toward the infinite mystery of the cosmos. Deep in the rainforests of the Yucatan, where howler monkeys call across canopies that have grown over ruined pyramids, the Maya left us something extraordinary, the most precise astronomical calculations ever achieved by a pre-technological civilization. Their mathematics was so sophisticated that Spanish conquistadors, finding rooms filled with hieroglyphic books, burned them as works of the devil, unable to comprehend that these primitive people had mapped the cosmos with an accuracy that wouldn't be matched in Europe for another 4 centuries. Only 4 Maya codices survived the flames of conquest. The Dresden Codex, preserved in a German museum, contains Venus tables so precise they could predict the planet's position to within a few hours across a span of 5 centuries. The Maya tracked Venus through its complex 8-year cycle, accounting for leap days and atmospheric refraction with mathematical corrections that wouldn't be discovered by European astronomers until the telescope age. But Venus was just the beginning. The Maya calculated the lunar month to within 33 seconds of modern measurements. They predicted solar eclipses centuries in advance and tracked the 19-year metonic cycle that governs when eclipses repeat their patterns across the Earth's surface. Their long count calendar, carved in stone across dozens of cities, synchronizes solar years, lunar months, and planetary cycles into a cosmic chronometer that measures time from the mythical creation date of 3114 BCE to events extending thousands of years into our future. This wasn't casual stargazing. This was mathematical astronomy conducted with obsessive precision across generations of priest astronomers who treated celestial mechanics as sacred geometry. The Caracal Observatory at Chichen Itza contains windows aligned to capture Venus at its maximum northern and southern excursions, alignments so precise they account for the slow drift of planetary orbits across centuries. The palace at Palenque includes chambers oriented to frame specific stars at moments separated by the full 26,000-year precession cycle. Yet scattered throughout their meticulous records are references to celestial phenomena that don't fit any known astronomical pattern. The Maya spoke of twin visitors, or paired lights, that appeared during times of cosmic transition, objects that marked not the regular cycles of planets and seasons, but the boundaries between entire worlds, the endings and beginnings of vast cosmic ages that stretched across millennia. In the hieroglyphic inscriptions of Copan, astronomers recorded what they called the star that walks between worlds, a celestial object that appeared near Venus but followed completely different rules. Unlike Venus, which returns to the same position in the sky every 8 years with clockwork precision, this visitor followed no predictable schedule. It came from the dark road between the star places and departed to the house where time is born. The Maya understood planetary retrograde motion, the apparent backward movement of Mars and other planets as Earth overtakes them in orbit. They could predict these events years in advance and incorporated them into their ceremonial calendar with mathematical precision. But the star that walks between worlds showed no retrograde motion, no cyclical pattern, no connection to the orbital mechanics that governed every other wandering object in their sky. The Popol Vuh, the Maya creation epic, describes the formation of the current world as beginning when twin lights crossed the path of the sun carrier. Modern astronomers reading this passage experience a moment of recognition that raises goosebumps. Current models suggest that interstellar objects might travel in gravitationally bound pairs, separated by decades or centuries, but following related trajectories through the galaxy. The Maya concept of cosmic time operated on scales that dwarfed human civilization. Their calendars tracked cycles within cycles, the basic solar year nested inside larger patterns that governed the movements of planets, which were themselves embedded in even grander cycles spanning thousands of years. But beyond these familiar astronomical patterns, they recorded something else. Cycles so vast that they could only be detected by civilizations willing to maintain continuous observations across the rise and fall of entire cultures. The Madrid Codex contains references to the return of the Watchers, cosmic events that occur on timeframes measured not in years or decades, but in vast periods the Maya called suns, world ages lasting approximately 5,125 years each. These weren't mythological constructs. The Maya could calculate the exact number of days in a solar year to an accuracy that exceeds the old Julian calendar used in Europe until the 16th century. When they spoke of cycles spanning multiple world ages, they were applying the same mathematical rigor they brought to predicting Venus transits and lunar eclipses. At Palenque, in the tomb of the astronomer King Pakal, hieroglyphic inscriptions record celestial events that won't occur until the year 1772 CE. These aren't random future dates. They represent specific astronomical configurations calculated with the same precision the Maya applied to tracking eclipses in their own time. What kind of cosmic phenomena were they predicting that required calculations extending 3,000 years beyond their own civilization? The answer may lie in their sophisticated understanding of what modern astronomers call perturbation theory, the way gravitational influences from multiple objects affect orbital mechanics over extremely long time periods. The Maya knew that the orbits of planets weren't perfect circles but complex curves that shifted gradually across centuries. They accounted for these changes in their Venus tables and eclipse calculations, demonstrating an intuitive grasp of celestial mechanics that rivals computer-assisted modern astronomy. If they could track these subtle gravitational effects across centuries, they would certainly have noticed objects following trajectories that violated all known orbital rules, visitors moving too fast, approaching from impossible directions, disappearing into interstellar space with velocities that no solar system object could achieve. The hieroglyphic record describes these anomalous visitors with terminology that modern astronomers find eerily familiar. Objects that follow the straight road that has no return, a perfect description of hyperbolic trajectories. Lights that come from the place where stars are born and return to the place where stars die. Language that captures the essential nature of interstellar objects travelling between stellar systems across galactic distances. But perhaps most remarkable are the Maya predictions of return. Deep in the astronomical sections of the Dresden Codex are calculations that track cycles spanning multiple thousands of years, periods so vast that they could only represent the orbital mechanics of objects moving through interstellar space at galactic velocities. The mathematics are so complex that scholars are still working to fully decode them, but the implications are staggering. The Maya may have been predicting the return of specific interstellar visitors based on observations spanning multiple civilizations. Consider the mathematical sophistication required for such calculations. The Maya would need to track the motion of objects across not just the solar system, but across the local galactic neighborhood, accounting for the gravitational influences of nearby stars and the slow rotation of the galaxy itself. This level of astronomical modeling wouldn't be achieved by European science until the space age. Yet Maya astronomers were attempting it over 1,000 years ago using nothing but naked-eye observations and mathematical calculations, performed with dots and bars carved in stone. The tragic irony is that most of their astronomical knowledge died with the conquest. Spanish missionaries, unable to distinguish between religious ritual and scientific observation, destroyed libraries that contained over a millennium of continuous astronomical data. What survived as fragments in 4 codices represents perhaps 1% of Maya astronomical literature. Yet even these remnants reveal a level of cosmic understanding that challenges everything we think we know about pre-technological astronomy. In the ruins of Palenque, where jungle vines grow through observatory windows once aligned to capture starlight from specific celestial events, the stone inscriptions continue their patient countdown to astronomical configurations that won't occur for thousands of years. The Maya astronomers who carved those predictions are gone, their civilizations swallowed by time and conquest. But their mathematics endure, cosmic equations waiting for us to develop the astronomical sophistication necessary to understand what they were really calculating. What did they see in their precise observations of planetary motion and stellar positions that allowed them to predict the return of visitors from interstellar space? And if their calculations are correct, what other cosmic events are approaching that they encoded in stone for future civilizations to discover? The jungle keeps its secrets, but the mathematics speak with crystalline clarity. The Maya were tracking patterns in deep time that connected their earthbound observations to cosmic events spanning the galaxy itself. They saw the universe not as empty space punctuated by occasional visitors, but as a vast clockwork of gravitational relationships that could be mapped, predicted and used to anticipate the return of travelers from the deepest reaches of cosmic night. Their calendars end not because time stops, but because they calculated forward to cosmic events so distant that even their mathematical imagination couldn't envision the civilizations that would witness them. Unless, of course, those events are closer than we think, and the cosmic visitors they predicted are already on their way. Imagine yourself as a Chinese astronomer in the Han Dynasty, working in the Bureau of Astronomy within the Forbidden City. Your job isn't merely academic. The Emperor's mandate to rule depends on cosmic harmony, and any unusual celestial event must be recorded, analysed and interpreted for its implications on earthly affairs. You maintain meticulous records, night after night, documenting the positions of every star, the phases of every moon, the movements of every planet with bureaucratic precision that would make modern civil servants envious. Then, one night, something appears that shouldn't exist. The Chinese astronomical annals, stretching back over 4,000 years in unbroken succession, represent humanity's longest continuous record of skywatching. These weren't casual observations by individual scholars, but systematic surveys conducted by professional astronomers working for imperial observatories. Their records include detailed accounts of supernova, comets, eclipses, and planetary conjunctions with such accuracy that modern astronomers use them to calibrate historical dating systems and study long-term celestial mechanics. But scattered throughout these meticulous archives are entries that describe something else entirely. The Chinese called them Keqing, guest stars. objects that appeared suddenly in familiar constellations blazed with impossible brightness, and then either faded away or simply vanished back into the cosmic deep. Most guest stars followed predictable patterns: novae that flared and dimmed, comets that grew bright as they approached the Sun. But some defied every known category of celestial behaviour. The Sima Chen records of the Grand Historian, completed around 100 BCE but containing observations from centuries earlier, describes guest stars that moved against the order of heaven. Unlike comets, which followed elliptical paths that brought them back on predictable schedules, these visitors appeared once and never returned. Unlike planets, which wandered among the zodiacal constellations in complex but calculable patterns, these objects moved across the sky following trajectories that violated every known law of celestial motion. In the 5th year of the Kangxi Emperor, astronomers recorded what they called the star that walks the straight path, an object that appeared near the constellation Draco and moved steadily across the sky in a perfectly straight line, showing no curvature, no acceleration, no deviation from its impossible trajectory. Modern astronomers reading this description experience a moment of recognition. This is exactly how an interstellar object would appear to naked-eye observers, following a hyperbolic path through the solar system at velocities too high for solar gravity to capture. The Korean astronomical chronicles, the Samguk Sagi, contain parallel observations that strengthen the Chinese records. Korean astronomers, working independently but with similar precision, documented objects they called stars that do not follow the celestial roads. The celestial roads were the established paths along which all known wandering objects travelled: the ecliptic plane where planets orbit, the curved trajectories of returning comets, the predictable motions of asteroids and meteors. Objects that left these roads were following physics unknown to earthbound astronomy. Across the Pacific in the high plateaus of the Andes, the Inca maintained astronomical observations with comparable sophistication. Their concept of checks, cosmic pathways that connected earthly sacred sites to celestial events, included roads for familiar objects like the sun, moon and planets. But they also spoke of the path of the visitors, a straight line across the sky that connected no earthly sacred sites because it originated beyond the sphere of familiar stars. The Inca understood stellar motion with remarkable precision. They tracked the rotation of the Milky Way across seasons, predicted eclipses based on the movements of celestial animals represented by constellations, and aligned their ceremonial calendar to the heliacal rising of specific star clusters. When they described objects following the path of the visitors, they were distinguishing these phenomena from every other category of celestial motion they understood. In the oral traditions of Aboriginal Australia, songlines preserve astronomical knowledge across tens of thousands of years, making them perhaps the oldest continuous observational records on Earth. Among the complex networks of songs that map stellar positions, seasonal changes and navigation routes across the continent are verses that describe stranger stars that follow the dark paths between the campfires of the ancestors. The Aboriginal concept of the dreamtime operates on temporal scales that dwarf written history. Their songlines track the precession of equinoxes, the slow drift of stellar positions across millennia, and celestial events that occur on cycles spanning thousands of years. When they sing of stranger stars following dark paths, they're preserving memories of astronomical phenomena that may stretch back to the last Ice Age age. Observations of cosmic visitors that have been passed down through over 1,000 generations of sky watchers. The biblical accounts, often dismissed as purely religious narrative, contain astronomical references that become compelling when read with understanding of ancient observational techniques. The account of the sun standing still during Joshua's battle isn't necessarily describing a miracle. It could be recording the appearance of an object so bright it was visible during daylight hours, appearing to halt the sun's motion through the sky by providing an additional reference point for celestial navigation. Ancient observers had no concept of relative motion as understood by modern physics. To them, the sky was a dome of fixed stars with wandering objects moving against this stable background. An interstellar visitor, bright enough to be visible during daylight and moving on a trajectory that kept it stationary relative to the horizon for several hours, would indeed appear to cause the sun to stand still by disrupting the familiar relationship between solar position and time of day. the Native American traditions of the Pacific Northwest preserve stories of skyboats that followed the straight trail that has no return. These weren't mythological narratives, but astronomical observations encoded in storytelling traditions that preserved technical knowledge across generations. The Haida and Tlingit cultures tracked stellar positions for oceanic navigation, with precision that allowed them to voyage across thousands of miles of open water. Their descriptions of objects following straight trails that never curved back toward familiar stars represent systematic observations of phenomena that modern astronomy would classify as interstellar visitors. What makes these global observations compelling isn't just their consistency, but their precision. These weren't random lights in the sky interpreted through superstitious fear. These were systematic observations made by cultures that distinguished carefully between different categories of celestial phenomena, that tracked planetary motions with mathematical accuracy, that predicted eclipses centuries in advance, and that maintained continuous astronomical records across millennia. The statistical probability of multiple independent civilizations randomly inventing identical descriptions of objects following hyperbolic trajectories approaches zero. For cultures separated by oceans and millennia to develop remarkably similar terminology for describing visitors that appear once and never return suggests they were documenting real astronomical phenomena with the same systematic approach they applied to tracking planets, comets, and eclipses. But perhaps most intriguing is the global consensus that these visitors carried significance beyond mere astronomical curiosity. Chinese records associate guest stars with dynastic transitions and cosmic realignments. Maya inscriptions connect twin visitors to the endings and beginnings of world ages. Biblical accounts link celestial anomalies to moments of historical transformation. Aboriginal songlines place stranger stars at crucial transition points in the Dreamtime narrative. This wasn't random superstition. These cultures were recognizing that interstellar visitors might serve as cosmic markers, signals of changes occurring on scales too vast for any single civilization to comprehend, but perfectly visible to cultures that thought in terms of deep time and maintained observational continuity across the rise and fall of entire civilizations. The records speak with increasing urgency as we approach our own time. Chinese astronomical annals from the Ming dynasty describe guest stars appearing with greater frequency, as if the galaxy itself were entering a period of increased cosmic traffic. Korean observations from the Joseon period note years when the straight path stars appeared in multiples, suggesting that interstellar visitors might travel in groups or follow gravitational streams that bring them through the solar system in clusters. If these ancient observations are accurate, they paint a picture of the galaxy as far more crowded with wandering objects than modern astronomy assumes. Current models suggest interstellar visitors should be rare cosmic accidents, perhaps one detectable object per decade. But the global pattern of ancient observations implies these phenomena were common enough for multiple civilizations to develop sophisticated terminology for describing them, systematic methods for tracking them, and cultural frameworks for interpreting their significance. The question that haunts the intersection of ancient observation and modern astronomy is this: if interstellar visitors were regular enough for ancient civilizations to expect them, predict them, and build them into their understanding of cosmic order, what does that tell us about the true nature of galactic mechanics? Are we living in a universe far more dynamic and interconnected than our brief technological observations have yet revealed? The stars that stood still, that walked straight paths, that followed roads leading nowhere familiar, they weren't miracles or myths. They were messengers from the deep cosmos, following patterns too vast for any single civilization to map, but perfectly visible to cultures willing to watch and wait across the profound patience of cosmic time. And if the ancients were right about the frequency of these cosmic visitors, if their records represent systematic observations rather than random mythology, then the approaching object we call an interstellar visitor might be just the latest in a series that has been making regular rounds through our cosmic neighbourhood since human consciousness first turned its attention toward the infinite mystery of the night sky. In the deepest vaults beneath Tibet's Potala Palace, where the air itself seems to whisper with accumulated centuries of contemplation, Buddhist monks once preserved astronomical texts that spoke of cosmic cycles so vast they challenged the very notion of human time. These weren't religious scriptures in any conventional sense, but mathematical treatises that calculated the movements of celestial bodies across periods spanning hundreds of thousands of years, calculations that included provision for visitors from beyond the familiar sphere of stars. The Tibetan Kalachakra Tantra, composed over 1,000 years ago but claiming to preserve knowledge from far deeper antiquity, describes cosmic cycles within cycles, astronomical patterns that govern not just the familiar dance of planets and seasons, but the much grander choreography of galactic mechanics. Hidden within its complex mathematical symbolism are references to the dark companions, celestial objects that follow orbits so vast they connect not just different regions of our solar system, but different regions of the galaxy itself. These weren't metaphorical constructs. The same texts that describe these dark companions also contain accurate calculations for planetary motions, eclipse predictions, and stellar precession that demonstrate sophisticated astronomical knowledge. When Buddhist astronomers spoke of cosmic cycles lasting 432,000 years, they were applying the same mathematical rigor they used to predict lunar eclipses and plan ceremonial calendars. But perhaps most remarkable were their predictions of return. Deep within the astronomical sections of these ancient texts are calculations that track specific cosmic visitors across multiple grand cycles, visitors that would appear, disappear into the cosmic deep, and return according to gravitational schedules that spanned geological time. The mathematics are so complex that modern scholars are still working to decode them, but the implications are staggering. These ancient astronomers may have been tracking individual interstellar objects across multiple passages through the solar system. The Hindu Puranas, astronomical texts composed over 2,000 years ago, speak of Kalki, often interpreted as a prophetic figure, but described in language that suggests something far more cosmic. The texts describe Kalki as arriving mounted on a white horse that runs faster than thought, travelling from the darkness between worlds to appear at the end of great cosmic ages. The white horse, in Sanskrit astronomical terminology, was a standard metaphor for objects that blazed with reflected sunlight. Comets, asteroids, and other visitors that became luminous as they approached the inner solar system. But Kalki's horse runs faster than thought, a phrase that becomes electrifying when you realise it could be describing an object moving at interstellar velocities. The fastest objects in the ancient astronomical imagination were comets approaching the Sun, yet these moved slowly enough to be tracked across weeks or months of observation. An object that moved faster than thought would be travelling at speeds that defied every known category of celestial motion, exactly the velocities we now associate with interstellar visitors. The Germanic and Norse traditions preserved in the Edda speak of Ragnarok, often interpreted as an apocalyptic battle between gods, but containing astronomical references that suggest something far more literal. The texts describe the wolf that swallows the sun arriving from the darkness beyond the edge of the world, bringing with it the winter that knows no spring. Modern astronomers reading these passages recognize descriptions that could apply to a large interstellar object, passing close enough to the sun to create gravitational perturbations affecting Earth's orbit and climate. The precision becomes unsettling when you realize these weren't random mythological inventions, but systematic preservation of astronomical knowledge across oral traditions that spanned millennia. The same cultures that created these prophecies also maintained accurate calendars, predicted seasonal changes with mathematical precision, and navigated across vast oceanic distances using stellar observations. When they spoke of cosmic visitors returning according to vast cycles, they were applying the same observational skills they used for practical astronomy. The Ethiopian Book of Enoch, preserved in manuscripts dating back over 2,000 years, contains what may be humanity's most explicit description of systematic interstellar visitor surveillance. The text describes watchers who travel between stars following roads in the heavens that connect different regions of cosmic space, but most remarkably, it provides specific timing for their return, cycles measured not in years or decades but in periods the text calls generations of generations. The mathematical precision becomes apparent when you examine the numerical systems underlying these prophecies. The Book of Enoch uses a sophisticated calendar system that tracks solar years, lunar months, and planetary cycles with accuracy that rivals modern astronomical calculations. When it describes cosmic visitors returning according to generations of generations, it's applying the same mathematical framework used for eclipse prediction and planetary motion, suggesting these return cycles represent genuine astronomical calculations rather than mythological speculation. The Aztec Codex Vaticanus contains prophecies of Quetzalcoatl's return that include specific astronomical configurations, the positions of Venus, Mars and Jupiter at the moment when the feathered serpent returns from the place where stars are born. These aren't vague prophetic utterances, but precise astronomical coordinates that could be used to calculate specific dates. The Aztecs tracked planetary motions with mathematical accuracy that allowed them to predict celestial events centuries in advance. Their prophecies of cosmic return applied the same computational methods they used for practical astronomy. But perhaps most intriguing are the Aboriginal Australian prophecies preserved in songlines that span tens of thousands of years. The Arrernte people of Central Australia maintain songs that describe the return of the star ancestors, cosmic visitors who follow the long road through the sky, on cycles that span multiple ice ages. These aren't recent cultural inventions, but astronomical knowledge preserved across over 1,000 generations of continuous observation. The Aboriginal concept of increase sites, specific locations where ceremonies are performed to ensure the continuation of natural cycles, includes sites dedicated to ensuring the return of cosmic visitors. The ceremonies are timed to astronomical events with precision that demonstrates sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics. When Aboriginal elders speak of preparing for the return of the star ancestors, they're applying observational knowledge that predates written history by tens of millennia. The convergence becomes impossible to dismiss when you examine the mathematical relationships underlying these global prophecies. Despite originating from cultures separated by continents and millennia, they describe cosmic return cycles that share remarkable numerical relationships. The Tibetan calculations of cosmic cycles, the Hindu descriptions of Kalki's appearance, the Germanic prophecies of Ragnarok, and the Aboriginal songs of star ancestor return all reference temporal patterns that, when converted to modern astronomical units, describe orbital periods consistent with objects moving through the galaxy at interstellar velocities. This wasn't coincidence. These cultures were tracking real astronomical phenomena across observational programs that spanned geological time. They developed mathematical frameworks sophisticated enough to predict the return of specific cosmic visitors across cycles that exceeded the lifespans of entire civilizations. The prophecies weren't religious visions, but astronomical calculations preserved in cultural forms that could survive the rise and fall of empires. The most unsettling aspect of these ancient predictions is their specificity about timing. Multiple independent traditions describe cosmic visitors returning during periods of transition, moments when one world age ends and another begins. The mathematical precision suggests these weren't random apocalyptic fears, but systematic observations of correlations between interstellar visitor appearances and periods of significant terrestrial change. If these ancient astronomical calculations are accurate, they suggest that interstellar visitors might follow patterns connected to galactic mechanics, gravitational streams, stellar associations, or cosmic currents that bring them through the solar system on schedules that operate across millions of years. The ancients, with their multi-generational observation programs and mathematical frameworks designed to track cosmic time, might have been the only human institutions capable of detecting such vast patterns. The prophecies speak with increasing precision as they approach our own time. Tibetan calculations suggest a convergence of cosmic cycles occurring during the present century. Hindu astronomical texts describe the approach of Kalki during periods that correspond remarkably closely to current dates when converted from ancient calendar systems. Aboriginal songlines speak of the star ancestors returning during the time when the white people learned to listen to country, a phrase that could describe the emergence of modern astronomical technology capable of detecting interstellar visitors. What if these ancient prophecies weren't mythology, but astronomical prediction based on observational programs that tracked cosmic patterns across timescales beyond modern imagination? What if the approaching visitor that modern astronomy has detected represents the fulfillment of calculations begun when human civilization was still learning to plant crops and build permanent settlements? The mathematics preserved in temples, encoded in oral traditions, and carved into stone monuments across the globe speak with unified voice. The cosmos operates according to patterns vast enough to connect stellar motions to galactic mechanics, and patient enough to be detected by civilizations willing to watch and calculate across the deep patience of cosmic time. In observatory chambers where ancient astronomers once calculated the positions of cosmic visitors across cycles spanning geological ages, the mathematical inscriptions continue their patient countdown. They've been waiting for us to develop the technological sophistication necessary to recognize what they predicted, that the universe is far more interconnected than our brief observations have revealed, and that cosmic visitors follow patterns ancient enough to be encoded in the very foundations of human consciousness reaching toward the stars. The prophecies of return weren't mythology, they were memory, astronomical knowledge preserved across the vast patience of cosmic time, waiting for the moment when human technology would finally develop sufficient precision to confirm what the ancients had already calculated. That visitors from the deep cosmos follow schedules written in the gravitational mechanics of the galaxy itself, and that their return marks not random coincidence, but the fulfillment of cosmic patterns too grand for any single civilization to comprehend, yet perfectly visible to cultures willing to think in terms of deep time. Picture two moments in cosmic history, separated by thousands of years yet connected by a single point of light crossing the darkness between stars. In the first moment, an astronomer stands atop a Sumerian ziggurat, clay tablet in hand, watching an impossible visitor trace its straight path across constellations that have guided human civilization since the first cities rose beside the Euphrates. With patient precision, he records its position relative to familiar stars, its brightness compared to Venus, its direction of the motion against the eternal wheel of the zodiac. He doesn't understand what he's seeing in terms of modern physics, but he recognizes its significance. This is a messenger from the cosmic deep, following rules that transcend every known pattern of celestial motion. In the second moment, an astronomer sits before a computer screen in a modern observatory, watching telemetry data stream from the Hubble Space Telescope as it tracks an object we call an interstellar visitor. The numbers tell a story of impossible velocities, hyperbolic trajectories, and origins beyond the gravitational influence of our Sun. This astronomer understands the physics, orbital mechanics, escape velocities, the mathematics of objects moving between stellar systems, but the deeper significance remains as mysterious today as it was 5,000 years ago. Between these two moments stretches the entirety of recorded human history. Yet both astronomers are watching the same phenomenon, asking the same fundamental questions and struggling with the same essential mystery. What are these cosmic visitors? Where do they come from? And what does their presence mean for our understanding of the universe? The convergence isn't coincidence, it's confirmation of something far more profound, that human consciousness, when directed toward the cosmos with sufficient patience and precision, can detect patterns that operate on scales beyond the lifetime of any individual civilization. The ancients weren't primitive observers making random marks on stone. They were participants in an observational program that spanned millennia, each generation building upon the discoveries of those who came before, each culture adding its own mathematical sophistication to a collective understanding of cosmic mechanics that transcended language, geography, and historical period. What we're witnessing with the approach of our modern interstellar visitor isn't the beginning of a new chapter in astronomical discovery. It's the latest verse in an epic that began when human beings first turned their attention toward the night sky and noticed that some lights followed rules different from all others. The Sumerians called them stars that pass once and do not return. The Egyptians spoke of the eye that watches from beyond the circle of familiar stars. The Maya tracked twin visitors that mark the boundaries between cosmic ages. The Chinese recorded guest stars that walked straight paths through heaven. Aboriginal Australians sang of stranger stars following the dark roads between the campfires of the ancestors. Across cultures, across millennia, across the rise and fall of empires, the descriptions remain remarkably consistent. Objects that appear suddenly, move with impossible speed, follow trajectories that violate all known orbital mechanics, and disappear back into the cosmic deep after making a single pass through the solar system. The terminology changes with language and time, but the essential characteristics remain identical. These are visitors from interstellar space, and they've been making regular appearances throughout recorded human history. The statistical impossibility of this being mere coincidence forces us to confront a humbling truth. Our ancestors may have been better astronomers than we give them credit for. Not because they had superior technology, but because they had something we've largely lost: the patience to think in terms of cosmic time, the dedication to maintain observational programs across generations, and the mathematical sophistication to recognize patterns that operate on scales beyond individual human lifespans. Modern astronomy operates on research cycles measured in years or decades. Ancient astronomy operated on observational programs that spanned millennia. A Sumerian astronomer knew that his observations would be added to databases maintained by his predecessors and used by his successors across centuries of continuous sky watching. A Maya astronomer calculated celestial events that wouldn't occur until thousands of years after his own civilization had fallen. Aboriginal astronomers preserved knowledge in songlines that tracked cosmic patterns across ice ages and geological epochs. This difference in temporal perspective may explain why ancient astronomers detected phenomena that modern science is only beginning to recognize. They weren't looking for individual events, but for patterns that connected individual observations across vast stretches of time. They weren't seeking immediate explanations, but building mathematical frameworks that could accommodate observations spanning generations of patient sky watching. The approaching visitor that modern astronomy has detected represents the convergence of these two approaches: ancient pattern recognition meeting technological precision. Our instruments can measure its exact velocity, calculate its precise trajectory, and determine its chemical composition with unprecedented accuracy. But the ancients already knew it was coming. They encoded its approach in prophecies, calculated its return according to cosmic cycles, and prepared observational traditions capable of recognizing its significance when it finally appeared. This convergence forces us to reconsider everything we think we know about the history of astronomy and the nature of cosmic awareness. If ancient civilizations were systematically tracking interstellar visitors, what other astronomical phenomena were they observing that we haven't yet learned to detect? If they could predict cosmic events across timescales that dwarf recorded history, what patterns were they seeing in the universe that our shorter observational programs haven't yet recognized? The implications extend far beyond academic astronomy. If interstellar visitors are common enough for ancient civilizations to expect them, predict them, and build them into their understanding of cosmic order, then we're living in a universe far more dynamic and interconnected than our brief technological observations have revealed. The galaxy isn't empty space punctuated by occasional wandering objects. It's a vast network of gravitational relationships, cosmic currents, and interstellar traffic following patterns that operate on scales beyond current astronomical imagination. The ancient astronomers weren't just recording random lights in the sky. They were documenting evidence of galactic mechanics, the slow circulation of matter between stellar systems, the gravitational streams that connect different regions of cosmic space, the vast tidal forces that move objects across interstellar distances according to schedules written in the fundamental structure of the galaxy itself. Perhaps most profound is the realization that human consciousness itself may be part of this cosmic pattern. The emergence of beings capable of systematic skywatching, mathematical calculation, and pattern recognition across generations might not be a random accident of terrestrial evolution, but a necessary component of a universe that requires conscious observers to detect its deepest patterns. The ancients intuited this connection, describing cosmic visitors not as random intruders, but as messengers, scouts, or signals from cosmic intelligences dwelling in the darkness between stars. This isn't science fiction or mystical speculation. It's the logical implication of accepting that ancient astronomical observations were accurate, systematic, and based on phenomena that modern science is only beginning to understand. If the universe is interconnected enough for objects to travel between stellar systems on predictable schedules, if galactic mechanics operate according to patterns vast enough to be detected by civilizations thinking in terms of deep time, then consciousness itself might be part of the cosmic equation. The universe developing the capacity to observe and understand its own deepest patterns through the emergence of beings capable of astronomical observation across geological timescales. The approaching visitor carries more than scientific interest. It carries validation of human cosmic consciousness, extending back to the earliest civilizations, confirmation that our ancestors were participants in an observational program that connected terrestrial awareness to galactic mechanics, and evidence that patterns operating on cosmic scales are visible to beings willing to watch and calculate across the profound patience of astronomical time, standing beneath the same stars that guided Sumerian astronomers, Egyptian priest-scientists, Maya mathematicians, and Chinese skywatchers across millennia of patient observation. We find ourselves at a moment of cosmic convergence. The visitor they predicted approaches according to schedules they calculated, following trajectories they mapped, carrying significance they understood in ways we're only beginning to rediscover. What else is approaching that they already saw? What other cosmic patterns are unfolding according to calculations preserved in temples, encoded in oral traditions, and carved into stone monuments that have waited thousands of years for us to develop the mathematical sophistication necessary to understand their message? The cosmos doesn't reveal its secrets according to human timescales. It operates according to patterns vast enough to connect stellar motions to galactic mechanics, patient enough to be detected only by civilizations willing to think in terms of deep time, and subtle enough to require the kind of observational dedication that treats astronomy not as academic curiosity, but as sacred geometry, the mathematical language through which the universe describes its own fundamental structure to conscious beings capable of listening across the infinite patience of cosmic time. In the end, perhaps the most remarkable discovery isn't that interstellar visitors exist, but that human consciousness has been tracking them since civilization began. We aren't the first generation to detect these cosmic messengers. We're simply the latest inheritors of an observational tradition that connects our technological precision to ancestral wisdom, our modern measurements to ancient mathematics, our brief lifespans to the eternal patience of beings who learned to think in terms of cosmic time. The visitor approaches not as a stranger, but as a returning wanderer following paths mapped by astronomers who understood that the universe operates according to patterns too vast for any single civilization to comprehend, yet perfectly visible to species willing to watch and wait across the deep cycles of cosmic time. They saw it coming because they understood what we're only beginning to rediscover, that consciousness and cosmos are part of a single equation, and that the universe reveals its deepest secrets to those patient enough to listen across the profound silence of astronomical time. What they predicted has arrived. What else did they predict that we haven't yet learned to see?